I stood there in the middle of the grand ballroom, my white wedding dress hugging my body just like I'd dreamed it would, but everything felt wrong. I'm Emily at 25. After years of scraping by on waitressing tips and community college classes, this was supposed to be my fresh start with Mark, the man I'd loved for 3 years. But as the reception kicked off, his mother, Victoria, grabbed the microphone from the DJ, her diamond necklace sparkling under the chandeliers like some kind of weapon. She cleared her throat and the room went quiet, all 200 guests turning to look at her with smiles that quickly faded. Welcome to Melina's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right? Now, I read every single comment and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria started, her voice sharp and dripping with fake sweetness. We're all here to celebrate my son and his bride. But let's be honest, Emily comes from nothing. No dowry, no family fortune to contribute. She's basically a beggar in a borrowed dress, latching onto our wealth like a leech. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I felt my face burn hot. My hands trembling at my sides as I clutched my bouquet tighter. I wanted to disappear right then, the weight of my past crashing down on me. Losing mom to cancer when I was 15, dad vanishing into dead-end jobs to keep us afloat. Me working double shifts just to afford rent in a tiny apartment. How dare she bring shame to our family? Victoria continued, pointing right at me. We built this empire from the ground up, and now she's here to take it all without giving a dime in return. Pathetic. Mark stood beside me, his face pale, but he didn't say a word. Just shifted uncomfortably in his tuxedo. The whispers started immediately, guests murmuring things like, "Poor girl, but really, no dowry?" And Victoria's right, it's unfair. I felt isolated in that sea of judgmental eyes, my dreams of a happy life shattering like glass. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to let them see me break completely. Deep down, the humiliation cut like a knife, reminding me of every rejection I'd faced because of money, or the lack of it. Victoria wasn't done yet. She leaned into the mic, her eyes locked on mine with pure contempt. "Emily, if you had any self-respect, you'd walk away now, but I suppose beggars can't be choosers." Laughter erupted from a few of her snobby friends, and I felt like the floor was swallowing me whole. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst, the pressure of years of struggle boiling up inside. I glanced at Mark, hoping he'd step in, but he just muttered under his breath, "Mom, maybe not now." That was it. No defense, no outrage. The betrayal stung almost as much as her words. I stood there frozen, the once joyful room now a pit of shame. And all I could think was how I'd fought so hard to get here, only to be torn down in seconds. As the DJ awkwardly tried to restart the music, Victoria handed the mic back with a smug smile. Like she'd won some battle. Guests avoided my eyes, and I felt utterly alone, the isolation wrapping around me like a cold blanket. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but instead, it was a nightmare exposing every insecurity I'd buried. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself as Mark finally pulled me aside to a corner table. "Emily, I'm sorry," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Mom's just protective of the family business." Protective? It felt like she was destroying me. The emotional weight pressed down, making it hard to breathe, and I wondered how much more I could take before something inside me snapped. Victoria sauntered over then, her heels clicking on the marble floor like judgment steps. "Sign this prenup, dear," she said, shoving a thick document into my hands. "It ensures you get nothing if things go south. We can't have gold diggers ruining us." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring with unshed tears, the cruelty of it all sinking in deeper. "I won't sign this," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Then the wedding's off. We don't marry paupers here." Mark looked between us, conflicted but still silent. The guests pretended not to notice, but I could feel their pitying stares, amplifying my shame. In that moment, the pain of my poverty-stricken past hit me full force. Nights without dinner, hand-me-down clothes, the constant fear of eviction. I'd thought marrying Mark would end that cycle, but here I was, being publicly dismantled. I clutched the prenup, crumpling it slightly in my fist, a tiny spark of anger flickering amid the humiliation. Victoria turned to the crowd, raising her glass. "To real family values, ones that don't include charity cases." More uncomfortable laughter followed, and I felt rejected on every level, like I didn't belong in this world of wealth. The isolation was suffocating, but beneath it, a quiet resolve began to form. I wouldn't let her win without a fight. As the evening dragged on, I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing water on my face to hide the tears. Staring at my reflection, I saw the girl who'd survived so much, now reduced to a punchline. The pressure built, and I whispered to myself, "This isn't over." But for now, the hook was set, the cruelty exposed, my suffering laid bare for all to see. I stepped away from the corner table, my legs feeling like jelly as I tried to process what had just happened in the ballroom. The music had started up again, some upbeat pop song that clashed with the tension in the air, and guests were milling around with their champagne flutes, pretending everything was fine. Mark followed me, his hand lightly on my elbow, guiding me toward a quieter alcove near the French doors that led to the garden. "Emily, let's talk about this," he said, his voice low and urgent. But I could hear the hesitation in it, like he was more worried about the scene than about me. I turned to face him, the crumpled prenup still in my hand, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Victoria was across the room, chatting with her socialite friends, but her eyes kept darting over to us, sharp and watchful. "What's there to talk about, Mark?" I asked, my voice cracking a little despite my effort to stay steady. "Your mom just called me a beggar in front of everyone. And now this?" I held up the document, my fingers shaking. He glanced at it, then back at me, his face a mix of sympathy and something else. Maybe fear of crossing his family. "Look, she's just being cautious," Mark replied, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Our family has a lot at stake, the business, the properties. She wants to make sure everything's protected." I stared at him, feeling a fresh wave of hurt wash over me. Protected from me? After 3 years together, after I'd supported him through his late nights at the office and celebrated his promotions, this is what it came down to? I thought about all those times I'd skipped meals to save for our dates, or patched up my clothes because I couldn't afford new ones, and now it felt like none of that mattered. Victoria must have sensed the moment because she strode over, her high heels echoing like warnings. She snatched the prenup from my hand and smoothed it out on a nearby table. Pulling a pen from her clutch, "Sign it, Emily," she demanded, her tone flat and commanding, like she was ordering a servant. "This isn't optional. It strips you of any claims to our assets, houses, stocks, everything. We've worked too hard to let someone like you waltz in and take a piece." Her words hit like slaps, each one reminding me of my empty bank account and the stack of unpaid bills back home. I shook my head, stepping back slightly. "I'm not signing anything that treats me like a thief," I said, trying to keep my voice firm. Mark shifted beside me, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, maybe we can discuss this later," he suggested weakly, but she shot him a glare that shut him up fast. "No, we discuss it now," Victoria snapped. "If she doesn't sign, she's out. No wedding, no nothing. I won't have a gold digger in this family." The label stung deep, planting a seed of doubt in my mind. Did Mark see me that way too? He didn't jump to my defense, just stood there, his silence speaking volumes. As she pushed the pen toward me, a few guests nearby paused their conversations, eavesdropping without shame. I felt the pressure building, the years of struggle flashing before me, taking care of Mom during her illness, watching Dad bury himself in work to pay the medical bills, then him disappearing into obscurity after she passed. I'd built my life from scraps, and now this woman was framing me as some schemer. "Think about it, dear," Victoria added with a smirk. "Without us, what do you have? A rundown apartment and a dead-end job. Sign, and you get to play house. Refuse, and you're back to scraping by." Mark finally spoke up, but it wasn't what I hoped. "Emily, it's just a formality," he said, his eyes pleading. "It doesn't change how I feel about you." But it did change everything. It made me question his loyalty. Wonder if he'd always choose his family over me. I felt a flicker of anger stir inside, a quiet promise to myself that I wouldn't just roll over. Not yet, though. I needed time to think, to figure out my next move without them seeing it coming. Victoria leaned in closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Clock's ticking," she said. "Sign or leave." I glanced at the document, my heart racing. The clauses were brutal. No alimony, no inheritance rights, nothing if we split. It was like signing away my future security, the one thing I'd craved after years of instability. "I need a moment," I muttered, turning away, but she grabbed my arm lightly. "No moments. Do it now or the reception ends here." The alcove felt smaller, the garden lights blurring through the glass doors as tears threatened again. Mark touched my shoulder. "Please, Em, for us," he whispered. But us felt one-sided right then. I thought of Dad's old letters, the ones where he promised things would get better someday. And that gave me a tiny spark, not to fight back openly, but to hold on, to wait for the right time. Victoria tapped her foot impatiently. "Well?" she pressed. I took a deep breath, feeling the seed of retaliation take root. "Fine," I said quietly, but I didn't reach for the pen. Instead, I let the moment hang, buying myself a little space. She smiled triumphantly, thinking she'd won, but inside I was already plotting, remembering Dad's vague mentions of old investments, wondering if there was more to our story than poverty. The conflict was official now, her move made, and though I stayed silent, the fight in me was awakening. As the evening noise filtered back in, I realized this was just the beginning. Victoria handed the prenup to Mark. "Make sure she signs it before the night ends," she instructed him, then walked away, her posture screaming victory. Mark looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry, but family's family," he said. That hurt more than her words, confirming my doubts. I nodded, playing along for now, but deep down I knew I had to dig into my past, find something to turn this around. I walked away from the alcove with Mark trailing behind me, my mind spinning from Victoria's demands and his weak attempts to smooth things over. The ballroom felt even more oppressive now, with the chandeliers casting harsh shadows on the polished floors and the guests laughing in, clusters as if my humiliation was just a minor hiccup in their evening. I needed air, so I pushed through the French doors into the garden, the cool night breeze hitting my face like a slap, carrying the scent of roses and distant rain. Mark caught up quickly, grabbing my hand gently. "Emily, wait," he said, his voice a mix of concern and frustration. "We can figure this out. Mom's intense, but she means well for the family." I pulled my hand away, turning to face him under the string lights that draped over the hedges, my wedding dress now feeling heavy and ridiculous in this setting. "Means well? She just threatened to end our wedding over a piece of paper that treats me like I'm after your money," I replied, my words coming out sharper than I intended, the doubt in his loyalty growing stronger. He sighed, looking back toward the doors where Victoria was visible inside, toasting with her friends. "It's not like that. The prenup is standard in our circle. Everyone signs them," Mark explained, but his eyes avoided mine, and I could see the conflict tearing at him. Before I could respond, Victoria burst through the doors, her face flushed with anger, the prenup still clutched in her hand like a weapon. "There you are," she said, marching up to us with two of her cronies in tow, her sister Evelyn and a family lawyer named Mr. Hargrove, who looked stern in his gray suit. "Emily, your little act of defiance isn't cute. We've been talking, and it's clear you're not here for love. You're fabricating a sob story to trap my son." Her words sliced through the air, and I felt my stomach drop. The whispers from inside the ballroom now spilling out as more guests peeked through the windows. I shook my head, stepping back toward a stone bench. "That's not true. I've been honest from the start about my mom, my dad, everything," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. Victoria laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the garden. "Honest, please. We did a quick check. Your father's a nobody, scraping by in some factory job. And you? Minimum wage and debt up to your ears. You're a gold digger, plain and simple." Evelyn nodded eagerly. "We've heard rumors she's been bragging to friends about landing a rich husband," she added, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat, pulling out his phone. "Miss Emily, if you don't sign, we'll have to take measures. We've already drafted a statement for the guests, explaining how you've misled Mark with lies about your background," he said, showing me a screen with a typed-up email ready to send. I glanced at it, seeing phrases like deceptive intentions and unfit for our family, and the rejection hit me like a punch, making me feel even more isolated in this garden full of shadows. Mark looked horrified. "Mom, that's too far. Emily's not lying," he protested weakly, but Victoria shot him down. "Stay out of it, Mark. This is for your own good." The guests inside were now openly staring, some even stepping out onto the patio, phones in hand as if ready to record the drama. Victoria turned to them, raising her voice. "Everyone, listen up. This girl thought she could waltz in without a dowry, without anything, and claim our fortune. But we've uncovered her scheme. She faked her whole story to snag Mark." Murmurs spread like wildfire, people whispering, "I knew it," and "Poor Mark." And I felt the shame burn hotter, my attempts to build a life here crumbling under their judgment. I tried to speak up, moving closer to Mark. This is insane. I've never bragged or schemed. Ask my friends, they'll tell you, I said, but Victoria waved me off. Your friends? Probably in on it. And if you don't leave now, we'll cancel the wedding right here. Announce it to everyone. You'll be the laughingstock, Evelyn chimed in again. We've got proof old social media posts where she complains about being broke. Then suddenly dating Mark. Coincidence, she sneered, and Mr. Hargrove nodded. Legally, we can sue for fraud if needed. Better to walk away quietly. Mark finally stepped between us, his face red. Enough! Mom, back off, he said, but his voice lacked real force and Victoria just smirked. Choose, Mark, her or the family. If she stays without signing, she's out, and so are you from the inheritance. The threat hung heavy, and I saw the fear in his eyes, deepening my sense of betrayal. Guests were filming now, the flashes from phones blinding me, and I felt utterly exposed, the higher conflict pushing me to the edge. I sat down on the bench, my dress pooling around me, trying to hold back tears. I won't let you ruin us like this, I whispered to Mark, but he just paced, torn. Victoria leaned in close. It's already ruined. Sign or go, your choice. Her cronies flanked her, blocking any easy exit, and the crowd's stares intensified the isolation, making me feel like a trapped animal. Deep down, the outrage built, my explanations ignored, but I clung to that flicker of resolve, knowing I had to endure this peak of shame before finding a way out. As the rain started to drizzle, mixing with my silent tears, Victoria pressed the prenup into my lap again. Last chance, she said. Mr. Hargrove added, refuse, and we'll email this to your workplace too. Let them know about the fraud. The escalation was relentless, their rumors turning into outright threats, and I felt the full weight of rejection, my honest intentions twisted beyond recognition. Mark knelt beside me. Maybe just sign for now, he urged softly, but I shook my head, the pain sharpening my determination even as the conflict soared higher. The garden lights flickered in the rain, and more guests gathered, their pity turning to disdain under Victoria's influence. See? She's speechless because it's true, Victoria announced triumphantly. I stood up slowly, facing her. You'll regret this, I said quietly, but she just laughed. Doubt it, beggar. The higher level of conflict left me reeling, but in that moment, the seed of retaliation grew stronger, hinting at the storm to come. The rain picked up as I stood there in the garden, soaking through my wedding dress and turning the white fabric into a heavy, clinging mess that stuck to my skin. Victoria's words still echoed in my head, her threats and the guests' stares making me feel smaller than ever, and I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed past Mark, who reached out half-heartedly, and stumbled back through the French doors into the ballroom, where the party had turned into a spectacle of whispers and pointed fingers. People parted as I walked through, my heels slipping on the wet marble, and I heard snippets like "she's done for" and "what a mess," which only deepened the knot in my chest. Victoria followed me inside, her voice booming over the music that someone had turned down. "Get out, Emily," she said, pointing toward the exit like I was trash. "You're not welcome here anymore. The wedding's off. Tell her, Mark." I turned to him, my heart pounding, hoping he'd finally stand up for me, but he just pulled out his phone, avoiding my eyes. It's over," he texted right there in front of me. The message popping up on my screen, "Family pressure is too much. Can't do this. Sorry." The words blurred through my tears, and I felt a sharp pain in my gut. Like everything I'd built with him was crumbling in seconds. I clutched my phone, staring at the screen as the rain dripped from my hair onto it. "Mark, please," I whispered, stepping closer to him, but he backed away, glancing at Victoria for approval. "It's for the best," he said out loud now, his voice flat and distant. "You knew this world was different. I can't lose everything over this." Lose everything? I'd already lost it all. My dignity shredded in front of 200 people, my future with him gone in a text, and now my social standing reduced to nothing but pity and gossip. Guests were snapping photos discreetly, and I knew by morning it'd be all over their social circles, labeling me as the failed gold digger. Victoria smirked, crossing her arms. "See? Even my son knows better. Now leave before we call security." Evelyn nodded beside her, adding, "And don't think about coming back for your things. We'll ship them to whatever hole you crawled out of." Mr. Hargrove stepped forward, holding out an envelope. "This is a formal notice," he said. "You're barred from any family properties. Any attempt to contact Mark will be considered harassment." I took the envelope with numb fingers, the paper already damp from the rain. and felt the full weight of isolation hit me. No family here to back me up. No friends close enough to intervene. Just me against their empire. I turned and walked toward the exit, my dress trailing water across the floor, each step feeling like it took all my strength. Outside, the valet looked at me with sympathy but said nothing as I waved off a cab. I couldn't afford one anyway, not after splurging on this day. The rain poured harder now, streets slick and empty under the streetlights. And I wandered aimlessly, my phone buzzing with messages from acquaintances. Heard what happened. So sorry, and you okay? But they weren't real concern. They were just nosy probes into my downfall. I collapsed onto a bench in a nearby park, the wood cold and wet, and let the sobs come, my body shaking as the stigma of poverty crashed over me like waves. Everything I'd fought for was gone. The stable life I dreamed of, the escape from scraping by on tips and ramen, all stripped away because I didn't have a dowry or a fancy last name. I thought about Mom's hospital bills that had drained us, Dad's endless shifts that left him broken, and how I'd promised myself marriage to Mark would change that. Now I was soiled in every way. Dress ruined, reputation trashed, future security vanished. Cars splashed by on the road, their lights blurring in my vision, and I felt utterly alone. No one to call, no place to go that didn't remind me of failure. My phone rang. It was Mark calling now, probably to twist the knife. I answered with a shaky voice. "What do you want?" I asked, wiping rain and tears from my face. "Just to say goodbye properly," he replied, sounding almost relieved. "Mom's right, you don't fit here. It was fun, but reality hit." "Fun? 3 years reduced to that? You coward," I muttered, but he cut me off. "Don't make this harder. Stay away or we'll make sure you regret it." The line went dead and I hurled the phone onto the grass, screaming into the night, the outrage boiling inside me at being judged solely on money. Like my love and efforts meant nothing. I sat there for what felt like hours, the rain easing into a drizzle, my body numb from the cold. A homeless man shuffled by, glancing at me in my ruined gown, and muttered, "Rough night, huh?" I nodded, too drained to speak, realizing I wasn't far from his world now, isolated, stripped of everything. The full force of that poverty stigma I'd escaped temporarily now pulling me back down. My apartment key was in my purse, but even that felt pointless. Rent was due soon, and without Mark's promises, I'd be evicted. The emotional humiliation peaked, tears mixing with rain, and I curled up on the bench, whispering to myself, how did it come to this? As dawn started to break, gray and unforgiving, I picked up my phone from the mud, seeing more texts, Victoria's number, "Don't even think about suing, we own the courts." It was the final blow, confirming my rock bottom, no dignity left, no security, no standing in anyone's eyes. I staggered to my feet, dress heavy and torn at the hem, and began the long walk home, each step amplifying the despair. I trudged through the rain-soaked streets toward the only place I could think of, a small cafe on the edge of town where I'd worked shifts during college, the kind of spot with sticky tables and fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. My wedding dress was a sopping wreck now, the lace torn from catching on a fence earlier, and my feet ached in the cheap heels I'd bought on sale. I pushed open the door, the bell jingling weakly, and the few late-night patrons glanced up from their coffee, their eyes widening at the sight of me looking like a drowned bride from a horror movie. The barista, an older woman named Rita who'd always been kind, rushed over with a towel. "Emily? Good Lord, what happened to you?" she asked, wrapping the towel around my shoulders as I slumped into a booth, the vinyl seat cold against my wet skin. I wiped my face with the towel, feeling the makeup smear, and took a deep breath, the sobs finally easing into shaky hiccups. "Everything fell apart, Rita," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Mark's family, they shamed me at the reception, called me a beggar because I have no dowry. Then they spread lies, said I was a gold digger, and Mark just ended it. Texted me like I was nothing." Rita slid into the seat across from me, her face creased with concern. "Those rich folks think they're better than everyone," she muttered, pouring me a hot coffee from a nearby pot. "You deserve better than that boy anyway. Drink this, it'll warm you up." I sipped the coffee, the bitterness matching my mood, and for the first time that night, I felt a tiny spark of clarity cutting through the despair. As I sat there staring into the black liquid, memories flooded back. Nights after Mom died when Dad and I would sit in places like this, him promising over cheap diner food that he'd make things right someday. "We've got secrets, kiddo," he'd say with a wink, But I always thought it was just talk to cheer me up. Now, with everything stripped away, those words echoed louder. Rita leaned in. You gonna let them get away with it? I've seen you fight through worse. Remember when you juggled 2 jobs in school? She asked, her eyes sharp. I nodded slowly, the humiliation from the garden still burning. But something shifted inside me. No more pleading or crying. It was time to stop being the victim. I set the cup down, my hand steadier now. You're right, Rita. I can't just curl up and disappear, I said, feeling that spark turn into a flame. They think I'm weak, broke, with no fight left. But I'll play along, act like I'm done, stay hidden while I figure this out. Rita smiled faintly. That's the girl I know. What are you thinking? I pulled out my mud-streaked phone, scrolling through old contacts. My dad, he's been quiet lately, working those factory jobs, but there might be more to it. I need to dig into some old stuff, like his financial papers from before Mom got sick. The idea felt solid, a first step toward turning the tables without them knowing. Rita nodded, grabbing a notepad. Start here, write down what you remember. And hey, my niece is a paralegal. She might help with records. I took the notepad, jotting notes, bank statements, old emails, Dad's business partners from years ago. As I wrote, the decision crystallized I'd gather information quietly, play the broken bride while building my case. Thanks, Rita. This is it. No more running, I told her, my voice gaining strength. She patted my hand. Good. Now dry off and crash at my place tonight. Tomorrow we start. I agreed, feeling the weight lift just a bit, the isolation cracking with her support. We left the cafe after I changed into some spare clothes from Rita's car, an oversized sweatshirt and jeans that smelled like laundry detergent, and drove to her small apartment above a laundromat. The hum of the machines below was soothing as I settled on her couch, wrapped in a blanket. Rita made tea, sitting beside me. Tell me more about your dad, she said. He always seemed like he had stories. I sipped the tea, recalling details. He used to own a small tech firm, but after Mom's cancer, he sold it all for her treatments. Or at least, that's what he told me. But there were whispers about investments he kept hidden. Rita's eyes lit up. Hidden? That could be key. Check public records, companies, house filings, maybe. I grabbed my laptop from my purse, thankfully waterproof, and started searching basic sites. Nothing deep yet, just enough to spark ideas. Look, here's an old incorporation document with his name, I said, showing her the screen. Rita peered over. And partners listed, track them down quietly. The plan formed. I'd contact one tomorrow, pose as updating family records, gather clues without alerting anyone. I'll act weak, like I'm moving on. But really, I'm building strength, I explained. She nodded approvingly. Smart, they won't see it coming. As the night wore on, I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling cracks. The rain pattering on the window. The pain from earlier, the rejection, the stares, Mark's betrayal, still ached. But it fueled me now instead of breaking me. No more tears, I whispered to myself. Time to strike back, Rita called from her room. You okay in there? Yeah, I replied. Better than okay. This is my awakening. She chuckled softly. Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. I closed my eyes. The decision locked in. Play weak, gather info, and wait for the right moment. With Rita as my first ally and those old clues as my starting point, the balance was shifting. Even if just in my mind for now. Morning light filtered through the blinds, and I woke with purpose. The despair from the park bench feeling distant. Rita was already up making breakfast. Eggs and toast, fuel for the fight, she said, sliding a plate over. I ate quickly, thanking her again. You've given me a place to start. I won't forget this. She waved it off. Just promise you'll nail those snobs. I smiled for the first time in hours. Count on it. Stepping out into the crisp air, I headed toward the library for free computers. Ready to dig deeper, the seed of retaliation now a growing plan. I woke up on Rita's couch the morning after my awakening, my head pounding from the endless tears and the cheap coffee we'd shared late into the night, and I stared at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that digging into Dad's past wasn't just some desperate fantasy. Rita was already in the kitchen, clattering pots, and she called out to me. Emily, you up? I found an old number for one of your dad's buddies from back in the day. Guy named Frank. Used to work with him on those tech gigs before everything went south with your mom. I sat up slowly, my body aching from the park bench and the walk here, and took the scrap of paper she handed me, the number scrawled in her loopy handwriting. Thanks, I said softly, my voice still raw. But what if it's nothing? What if I'm chasing shadows? Rita shrugged. Pouring me a bowl of cereal. Won't know till you call. Just be careful, people get weird about old business. I waited until she left for her shift at the cafe before dialing the number on my phone, my fingers trembling as it rang, and when a gruff voice answered, "Yeah?" I almost hung up. "Hi, this is Emily, Robert's daughter," I said, keeping my tone light but steady. "I'm trying to piece together some family stuff from his old work days. Rita gave me your number, said you might remember something." There was a long pause on the other end, the kind that made my stomach twist. And then Frank muttered, "Robert's kid, huh? Been a while. What do you want to know?" I leaned against the counter, glancing out the window at the quiet street, just anything about his investments or deals after Mom got sick. He always said things would turn around, but then he just took those factory jobs. Frank coughed, his voice dropping lower. "Look, kid, that was messy. There were attempts. People trying to grab what wasn't theirs. But I can't say more over the phone. Meet me if you want, but no promises." We agreed on a rundown diner across town, the kind with vinyl booths cracked from years of use and waitresses who called everyone Hon. And I took the bus there, my heart racing the whole way, wondering if this was the start of something real or just more disappointment. Frank was already there when I arrived, hunched over a coffee mug in the back booth, his face lined and wary, like he'd seen too many bad deals. I slid in across from him, ordering water to save my last few dollars. "Thanks for coming," I said, folding my hands to stop them shaking. He nodded curtly. Robert was a good man, sold the firm to pay bills, but there were side things, bits he tucked away. Not much, mind you, but enough that some folks noticed. I leaned in, whispering, "What folks? Like, trying to take it?" Frank glanced around the empty diner, his eyes darting to the door. "Yeah, relatives, maybe, or connections. There was a paper once, a transfer form that looked off. Signature didn't match his. Bounced, though, that's all I got." He pulled a folded, yellowed page from his jacket pocket. Not the original, but a photocopy with edges frayed, and slid it across the table without letting go at first. "This is it," he said in a low voice. "Incomplete, no date stamped, no notary. Just shows someone tried to move something, assets, whatever, without right. But don't ask for more, I ain't got it." I unfolded it carefully, scanning the blurry text, seeing Dad's name and a scribbled signature that didn't look like his looping style from old birthday cards. There was a note about claim transfer crossed out in pen, but no details on what or how much, just enough to make me wonder if Victoria's family had their fingers in it somehow, through some distant business tie. "Why hide this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Frank leaned back, his face paling. "Because people get hurt digging. Robert warned me once, said keep quiet. Shadows watching, you know." He stood abruptly, tossing cash on the table. "That's your piece. Don't call again, and watch your back, kid." I sat there alone after he left, staring at the photocopy, folding it into my pocket with hands that felt cold despite the diner's stuffy air. Realizing this confirmed I wasn't crazy. Something had gone wrong in Dad's past. A grab at what he might have hidden. But it was so vague. No real proof. Just a hint that made my skin crawl. Like I'd touched a live wire. The waitress refilled my water, eyeing me curiously. "You okay, hun? Look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just family stuff." But inside, fear gnawed at me. If this was real, pushing further could drag me into danger I wasn't ready for. I left the diner, head down against the afternoon chill, weaving through side streets instead of the main road. Paranoia setting in as I glanced over my shoulder, sure that someone might be following. Back at Rita's, I hid the paper in my bag under the couch, not even telling her about it yet. My mind spinning with fragments, the off signature, Frank's warnings, the sense of a powerful hand trying to seize what didn't belong. I paced the small living room, the floor creaking under my feet, whispering to myself, "This is bigger than I thought. If I keep going..." Rita came home from her shift, kicking off her shoes. "How'd it go?" she asked, but I shrugged vaguely. "Got a lead, but it's thin." Guy was scared. She nodded, not pressing, and we ate leftover pasta in silence, the TV droning in the background. But as night fell, I couldn't shake the unease, peeking through the blinds at the dark street, spotting a car idling a block away that hadn't been there before, its lights off but engine humming softly. I turned off the lamp early, lying awake on the couch, the photocopy burning a hole in my thoughts, realizing I'd opened a door to something hidden and risky, where one wrong step could bring it all crashing down. "This will get dangerous," I thought, clutching the blanket tighter. deciding to keep my next move secret even from Rita for now, just in case. Outside, the car finally drove off, but the tension lingered, a whisper of vigilance that made every shadow feel alive. I sat in the dim corner of the public library the day after meeting Frank, the photocopy of that incomplete transfer form tucked deep in my bag, its blurry lines still haunting me as I hunched over a computer screen, my fingers hovering before typing anything. The place was quiet, just a few patrons flipping through books, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, that idling car from last night making me paranoid, like invisible eyes were tracking my every move. Rita had gone to work, leaving me alone with my thoughts, and I knew I couldn't just sit on this fragment. It was time for a small test. Something anonymous to see if it stirred anything without putting my name out there. A way to poke at Victoria's confidence from the shadows. I pulled out the burner phone I'd picked up at a discount store earlier, paying cash so nothing traced back, and stared at it for what felt like forever, my heart thumping slow and heavy in my chest. The idea had formed gradually. Use an anonymous email service to send a vague question to one of Mark's family associates, someone on the periphery, not directly to Victoria or the core group. From the old business mentions in Frank's talk, I'd searched public directories on the library computer and found an email for Evelyn's husband, Victor, who handled some of their peripheral investments, nothing big, just enough to plant a seed. Keep it simple, I whispered to myself, logging into a throwaway account I'd set up minutes ago. The message was short. Curious about old transfers from Robert's firm? Signature looked off on a form I saw. Any history there? No details, no accusations, just a nudge about the forgery hint. Signed, Concerned Observer. I hit send, then deleted the account history. My breath shallow as I logged out and cleared the browser cache. The screen's glow reflecting my tense face. Time stretched after that. The library clock ticking louder in my mind as I pretended to read a magazine. But really, I was refreshing a dummy social media profile I'd made to watch Mark's family from afar, their posts public enough for outsiders to see. An hour passed, then two, the slow drip of uncertainty making my palms sweat. Had it landed? Was it ignored? Finally, a new post popped up from Evelyn, a vague rant about nosy outsiders digging into family matters. Her usual polished tone cracked with irritation, and comments from relatives started trickling in. Whispers in digital form. Victor replied first. Who sent that email? Sounds like trouble stirring. Another cousin chimed in. Probably nothing, but we should check logs. Remember those old deals? The thread grew, family members tagging each other, blame shifting subtly. Evelyn, wasn't that your side's connection? And her sharp response, don't point fingers, we all signed. Off back then. I watched it unfold from my seat, the screen blurring slightly as my eyes strained. A quiet thrill mixing with fear. This was working, sowing doubt without me showing my hand. Victoria joined the fray late, her comment popping up like a warning shot. Ignore the bait, but if someone's prying, we need to know who. Victor, trace that email. Her words were calm on the surface, but the all caps, now at the end, betrayed a crack. Her usual iron control slipping just a notch as replies turned paranoid. Could be an insider. Leaking, from Mark and Evelyn firing back, or your ex during drama thought she was gone. The internal fractures appeared, accusations flying in private tones made public by their haste. Family unity fraying as they questioned loyalties over something as small as my anonymous query. I closed the tab slowly, my hand steady now but my mind racing. This confirmed I was on the right track, the vague hint from Frank touching a nerve, proving there was something buried they didn't want uncovered. But it also scared me deeper. If a simple question sparked this, what would happen if I pushed more? I slipped out of the library into the fading afternoon light, head down, weaving through back alleys to Rita's place, checking reflections in windows to ensure no one followed. The air felt thicker, tense with the danger I'd invited, like throwing a single stone into still water and watching ripples spread uncontrolled. Back at the apartment, I paced the small space, Rita still at work, and refreshed the social feed on my phone one last time before turning it off for the night. The comments had escalated, Victoria posting a follow-up, family meeting tomorrow, mandatory. No excuses. Her profile picture stared back, her smile forced, and a private message leak someone screenshot showed her snapping at Victor. Find out or you're cut off. It was a small loss of control, her paranoia dismantling the facade, making her lash out at her own. I sank onto the couch, the burner phone hidden away, realizing this test had shifted the balance just enough to make things more dangerous. Now they knew something was wrong, and I braced for whatever came next. I stepped out of the library after sending that anonymous email, my heart still racing from watching the family's social media start to crack. But the high didn't last long because by the time I got back to Rita's apartment that evening, a weird unease settled over me like a heavy fog. Rita was at the cafe for her late shift, so I was alone, pacing the small living room with the blinds half drawn, and I kept peeking out at the street, swearing I saw the same dark sedan parked a block away, its windows tinted so I couldn't see inside. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but then my phone buzzed with a text from an old coworker I'd barely spoken to since the wedding. Disaster. Hey, Emily. Heard some wild stuff about you hacking into Mark's family emails or something. Victoria's been calling around saying you're obsessed and unstable. You okay? I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting, realizing the smears had started fast, turning my small poke into a weapon against me without them even knowing for sure it was me. I deleted the text and called the coworker back, my voice low as I sat on the couch, clutching the photocopy from Frank in my lap like it was my only lifeline. What exactly did she say? I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated on the other end. Just that after the reception blow-up, you've been acting weird, disappearing and meeting shady people. Said it's suspicious timing with some family privacy issue they're dealing with. Emily, I don't know, maybe lay low, she's got pull, could mess with your job references. I felt the air suck out of the room, the social pressure hitting like a wave. And before I could respond, she added, "Gotta go, don't want to get involved," and hung up. More texts rolled in from mutual acquaintances, forwarding rumors. Victoria says you're bitter and spreading lies to get back at Mark. Careful, she's talking to lawyers. I turned off my phone, my hands shaking. The isolation creeping back in as friends I'd counted on started ghosting me, their avoidance making me feel like a pariah all over again. The next morning, I headed to the diner where I'd met Frank, figuring I could grab a cheap coffee and think. But as I walked the blocks, I noticed a man in a gray coat trailing me from across the street. His phone out like he was texting, but his eyes locked on my path. I quickened my pace, ducking into a store to lose him, but when I came out, he was gone, or maybe just better hidden. At the diner, I slid into a booth and called Frank from a payphone in the corner, my voice whispering. "It's Emily. Did you hear anything after our talk?" He sounded rattled right away. "Kid, they reached out. Some lawyer named Hargrove called, asking about old chats with Robert. Offered to settle some ancient tax thing if I stayed quiet about any papers. Said it's routine, but felt like a threat." I gripped the receiver tighter. "Did you take it?" "No," he snapped. "But if they sue over that debt, I'm done. Don't contact me again, they're watching." The line went dead and I felt the photocopy in my pocket burn, like my vague clue was slipping away. Witnesses getting scared off before I could build anything real. Back on the bus to Rita's, I spotted the gray coat guy again, boarding 2 stops after me and sitting far back, his gaze averted but too deliberate, making my skin crawl with the sense of surveillance closing in. I got off early and took side streets, my breath coming short, exhausted from the constant looking over my shoulder, and when I finally made it home, Rita was there, her face pale as she held up a letter that had come in the mail. "This was slipped under the door," she said, handing it to me. It was on fancy letterhead from Hargrove's firm, a formal warning not to pursue any baseless inquiries into the family's affairs, citing potential defamation if rumors persist. "We advise you to cease all contact with associates from your past," it read, with a line that chilled me. "If you're the one stirring this, know we protect our own." I read it aloud to Rita, my voice cracking. "They suspect me, timing after the wedding, me vanishing, maybe even spotting me at the library or diner." Rita nodded grimly. "That's a bluff, but scary. No proof mentioned, just threats." The hits kept coming that afternoon. My old boss from the waitressing job called, sounding awkward. "Emily, we've had complaints from a big client, Victoria something, saying you're unreliable. Maybe even involved in some harassment. Can't risk it. We're letting you go." I protested into the phone. "That's not fair. I haven't done anything." He sighed. "Sorry, kid. Her family's connected. Good luck." The call ended, and I slammed the phone down, tears burning my eyes as the job loss hit. My already empty bank account now a ticking bomb. The power imbalance suffocating me like I couldn't breathe. Rita hugged me. "We'll fight this," she said, but I pulled away, bewildered and crushed, whispering, "How? They crush people on suspicion alone." More rumors spread online, old friends posting subtly. Heard some tea about that wedding. Girls gone rogue. I felt the walls closing, my little evidence threatened, witnesses backing off, livelihood impacted, all without them needing hard proof. By evening, I paced Rita's kitchen, the PI's shadow still fresh in my mind, and Hargrove called my number directly, his voice smooth but menacing. "Miss Emily, this is a courtesy. Our client believes your recent activities, meeting old contacts, lurking around public spots, align with a breach we're investigating. Stop now or we'll escalate to protective measures." I stayed silent at first, then managed, "I don't know what you're talking about." He chuckled coldly. "Of course, but if it's you, consider this your warning, no games." The call clicked off and I sank to the floor, exhausted. The barrage of events leaving me reeling, thinking if I didn't change how I played this, hiding in shadows, I'd lose for good. Rita knelt beside me. "What now?" I wiped my face, a forced decision forming. "I can't sneak around anymore. I need to find a real lawyer or maybe track down Dad himself. Set up a confrontation before they bury me." I sat on Rita's couch after Hargrove's threatening call, the pieces of that warning letter still on the floor. And I knew I couldn't keep sneaking around or they'd wipe me out completely before I even had a chance to fight. Rita looked at me with concern as she brewed more coffee. "Emily, you need to go big now," she said, handing me a mug. "No more shadows. They're too strong for that." I nodded, my mind sharpening despite the exhaustion, and I pulled out my phone, staring at Dad's number for a long minute, my thumb hovering because I feared they might be listening somehow, tapping lines after all their PI games. "What if they're wiretapping?" I whispered to Rita, who shrugged. "Use my landline, old school, harder to trace." I dialed from there, the rotary click feeling ancient and safe, and when Dad answered, his voice low and guarded, I kept it vague. "Dad, it's me," I said quietly. "Things are bad with Mark's family. I found something, an old paper that looks wrong. Did you hide stuff from me?" He paused, breathing heavy on the line. "Emily, not over the phone. I kept things quiet for a reason, to protect you from grabs like that. You've been pulled in now, so meet me tomorrow. Neutral spot, bring nothing electronic." I agreed, heart pounding, and hung up, the hesitation in his tone making it clear he wasn't spilling everything yet, just enough to draw me in. The next morning, I headed to the park he'd named, a quiet spot near the river with benches hidden by trees. Arriving early to scan for any tales from that PI, my bag empty except for the photocopy folded small in my pocket. Dad showed up on time, wearing his usual worn jacket, and we sat far from others, him glancing around before speaking. "I didn't tell you everything after your mom," he said, his eyes distant. "Sold the firm, but squirreled away investments in a trust, beyond what those vultures could imagine. They tried forging my name on transfers back then, thinking I was broke." He pulled an envelope from his coat, thick with papers, and let me peek but not take yet. Originals here, bank records with timestamps. The real transfer deeds showing their fakes don't match. Trust docs naming you. Cross-check against what you found. I scanned quickly, seeing the signatures line up perfectly against the forgery I'd spotted. Dates proving tampering years ago, all irrefutable if presented right. "Why meet now?" I asked, voice low. "Because you've stirred them," he replied. "I'll back you, but we do this smart, no leaks." I nodded, tucking the envelope into my bag, feeling the weight of real leverage for the first time. Originals that could dismantle their lies without room for doubt. Back at Rita's, I called Lisa from a burner phone I'd grabbed on the way, keeping it brief. "Got originals from Dad," I told her. "Need you to organize them. Contact a notary for affidavits." She agreed, and we met at a small notary office downtown, the kind with a Ron setup for remote verification, her printing forms while the notary watched over video to stamp everything legit. "I'll prepare affidavits based on these," Lisa said, sorting the bank records and trust docs into folders, cross-referencing timestamps to the forged attempt. "No conclusions here, just facts attested." The notary nodded on screen, applying digital seals after we swore to the authenticity. And I left with bound copies, the papers now bulletproof for any showdown. "This sets it up," Lisa added as we parted, "but you need witnesses who aren't biased." I thought of Harold Jenkins. The former partner Frank had mentioned in passing during our diner talk as someone who'd seen the early deals, and I tracked his number through an old directory app on Rita's computer, calling him cautiously. Harold, Emily, Robert's daughter. Frank pointed me your way. I have originals showing forgery attempts on Dad's stuff. Will you review and sign an affidavit? He paused, then said, For Robert, yeah. Facts speak for themselves. Send secure. I'll attest what I witnessed back then. His referral from Frank made it solid, not random, and he emailed back a signed statement later, detailing how he'd seen the mismatched signatures firsthand, adding neutral weight without emotion. To pull in more balance, I reached out to two neutral relatives on Mark's side, an uncle who'd always stayed out of Victoria's dramas, and a cousin who'd posted mildly against the family rumors online, both reachable through public contacts I'd dug up. Family meeting coming, I messaged the uncle anonymously at first. Evidence of fraud review if you want facts, not sides. He replied curiously, agreeing to attend for transparency, and the cousin followed, saying, If it's real, I won't ignore it. Business ties matter. Their motivation was self-preservation, protecting their own shares from Victoria's mess, not loyalty to me, which made them perfect allies who couldn't be dismissed as biased. With that locked, Lisa helped package the invitation to Hargrove, framing it as settlement talks to resolve the ongoing disputes and sign an NDA, making it sound like I was desperate to end the smears and threats. They're overconfident, she said, hitting send. Think you're folding, they'll bite to control the narrative. Hours later, Hargrove replied, Accepted. Estate, tomorrow evening. Come prepared to concede. I stared at the confirmation text, the estate address glowing on my screen, knowing they saw me as weak, ready to bury me quietly, but I had the full hand now, originals, affidavits, neutral witnesses, all set for exposure without a word leaked yet. Rita watched as I gathered the files into a locked briefcase she'd lent me, the tension in the air like a wire about to snap. You okay? She asked, and I nodded, cold focus settling in. Preparation's done, I said. Now they have nowhere to run. I stepped out into the night, briefcase in hand, the streetlights casting long shadows as I walked to the bus stop, the weight of it all pulling me forward, the countdown ticking. I stepped into the estate's opulent living room with my briefcase in hand, the weight of the originals and affidavits inside giving me a quiet strength I hadn't felt since the reception nightmare, and Rita stayed in the car out front, engine running just in case. The room was filled with the family, Victoria presiding at the head of the polished mahogany table like she owned the world, Mark sitting tense beside her in his pressed shirt, Evelyn and Victor murmuring in the corner, Hargrove with his legal pads spread out, and the neutral relatives, the uncle and cousin, seated off to the side, their expressions wary but attentive. Victoria leaned back in her chair, a smirk playing on her lips as she gestured to an empty seat. Emily, dear, sit down, she said smoothly. We're all here for this little settlement chat. Sign the NDA, take your pity check, and we can put this unpleasantness behind us. Hargrove nodded, sliding a document my way. It's generous, considering your position, he added, his tone clipped. I remained standing, unlocking the briefcase without a word, and placed the first folder on the table, letting the papers speak before I did. These are the originals, I said calmly, my voice even as I opened the folder to the bank records. Timestamps show the transfer deeds your cousin's firm tried to alter years ago, after Mom's illness left us struggling. The uncle picked up the sheet first, his brow furrowing as he compared signatures. This doesn't match what I recall from the family filings, he muttered, passing it to the cousin. Facts here are clear, someone tampered. Victoria's eyes narrowed, but she kept her composure, waving a hand dismissively. Old papers mean nothing. You're grasping at straws, girl. Hargrove explained to her how this is irrelevant. Hargrove scanned the documents, his face shifting slightly as he cross-referenced the trust statements. These appear authentic, he said slowly. If verified, they suggest irregularities in past claims. I slid over Harold's affidavit next. Harold Jenkins, Dad's former partner, confirmed he saw the mismatched signatures firsthand, notarized yesterday. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice rising. Victoria, you handled those deals, said they were clean. If this implicates us... Victor interrupted her, pulling back. I didn't sign off on anything shady. We need our own counsel here. Whispers started among the relatives, the air thickening with doubt, their self-interest kicking in as they eyed Victoria warily. The door creaked open then, and Dad entered quietly, his factory boots scuffing the marble floor, carrying a sealed envelope that he placed beside my folders without fanfare. I'm here to verify, he said, his voice steady but not dramatic. Those are the originals I kept hidden to protect Emily from grabs like this after her mom passed. The signatures are mine, the forgeries aren't. I concealed the trust because I knew relatives would come sniffing, framing us as poor to justify taking what wasn't theirs. Victoria's face drained of color, her hands gripping the table. Robert, this is a setup. You were nothing, a broke laborer. These are lies. But Dad shook his head. No lies. The trust statements prove the motive. You thought we had nothing left, so you forged to claim it. The cousin spoke up, holding a page. This ties back to your firm, Victoria. I'm calling my attorney. We can't be dragged down if investigation hits. The uncle nodded agreement. Facts don't lie. Better to distance now, protect our stakes. Hargrove cleared his throat, standing up. I need to step aside. Potential conflicts here. Advise no further discussion without representation. He gathered his things quickly, glancing at Victoria with a hint of regret before heading out, leaving her more isolated as relatives pulled out phones, dialing their lawyers in a flurry of self-preservation. Victoria shot to her feet, her chair tipping back with a clatter, her voice cracking as she pointed at me. You think you can waltz in here with fakes and ruin me? Mark, tell her to stop this nonsense. Mark looked between us, his face pale, then stood slowly, turning to her. Mom, if these docs are real, I can't ignore it. I'm handing over my access to the family accounts. Let the auditors sort it. His words hit like a blow, him publicly siding against her, accepting he'd lose his inheritance slice to prove he was done with the lies. Mark, you traitor! Victoria hissed, lunging toward the papers as if to snatch them, her hands shaking. These are mine to destroy. But Dad stepped in front, blocking her gently. No more, he said. You've humiliated my daughter enough, shamed her for poverty you helped create. I called the police then, my voice steady on the phone. We have evidence of forgery and threats here, possible obstruction if documents are tampered. Relatives murmured approval, the cousin adding, We'll cooperate fully. Seize what you need for investigation. Victoria backed away, isolated now as her family turned, Evelyn muttering, We should have seen this coming, and Victor already on the line with his lawyer, cutting ties to avoid fallout. The officers arrived within 20 minutes, reviewing the originals and affidavits on the table, nodding as they took statements. We'll file the report, seize these for verification, one said, bagging the documents carefully. Ma'am, any attempts to interfere could lead to temporary detention for questioning. Victoria stood frozen, her empire fracturing without a single arrest yet. Relatives scattering to their cars, calling board members to freeze assets and start reclamation processes. Mark walked over to me as the police wrapped up. I should have defended you from the start, he said quietly. I'll make it right, no more family strings. I looked at him, the rejection from before still lingering, but his action in the room showed he'd paid a price. We'll see, I replied, not committing yet, but open. Dad put a hand on my shoulder as we left, the estate's lights fading behind us. You reclaimed what they took, your dignity, he said softly. True wealth isn't what you hoard. It's what you hold on to when humiliation, shame, rejection, poverty, and isolation try to strip it away. And in the end, their contempt came back to haunt them, leaving me free to start anew. Now let me ask you honestly, if you were threatened, slandered, or forced to accept money to lie, would you have the courage to say no? Tell me about a time in your life when you were forced to remain silent to avoid trouble. If this story reminds you that your voice also has value, please like to support those who dare to speak up. Share, so that one more person doesn't have to bow their head and subscribe, because this world needs more people like... On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I think you'll really enjoy. There are many more waiting for you on the channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. With all my love and respect.